What's going on, guys? This video, I am starting a new series called Getting Started with Angular 2. And first things first is we're going to be using a generator to kind of get us up and running with Angular 2 just in minutes. And if you are familiar with the Gulp Angular 1 generator, this generator is made by the same guys. It's called Fountain.js. Um, so if you go to fountainjs.io, you'll see how to install the generator and then call yo fountain web app. I've gone ahead and installed the generator, and I'm cd'd into my directory, and I'm going to say in fountain web app. And then just give this a second, and I should be getting a series of questions just asking me what I would like to generate. So just give us a second here. There we go. All right, so we're gonna go. You can choose from React, Angular 2, or Angular 1. I'm gonna go with Angular 2. I want to do Webpack with npm, TypeScript, Sass. This is new in the latest release of the generator. I've just been running with Travis, um, and then I'm just gonna do just a hello world, and then I'm actually gonna run with Angular UI router. Um, haven't played enough around with the default Angular router to be convinced enough to be using that over UI router. I was a heavy UI router user with Angular 1, so I am sticking with that. All right, and this is just going to take a while, so I'll pop you guys back in once this is done. Alrighty, guys, we're back and all set up. Um, let's go ahead and just run a gulp serve just to make sure that everything is working. So over here, we should be getting, once this finishes compiling everything and getting ready to roll. All right, so then, ta-da, we got a hello world. And you can see that we're running on localhost 3000. And we are all set to go. So let's take a look at our code base here. All right, so we got all of our config files up in the conf directory. We've got gulp tasks running in the gulp task directory. Node modules, which is pretty typical nowadays. Typings is fairly new if you're new to TypeScript. So in TypeScript, we've got our globals, these are our global dependencies for TypeScript. And TypeScript has a TypeScript or a typings.json file, just like package.json or bower.json, to kind of lay out and scope out all of its dependencies and what it needs in order to compile and to run correctly, and to compile down into a browser language like JavaScript so that the apps can be read correctly on the browser, but then easy for us to write on these code editors, which is awesome. So let's take a look at just the base of our app right now. So our index.typescript file here. As you can see, we're loading in Angular and loading in the bootstrap portion of Angular. And then here we're loading in our UI router config, our UI router providers, our UI view, location, strategy, path locations, my UI router configs. So this is all like router stuff and Angular, basic Angular stuff getting ready to go. This defines whether or not we are in production mode or if we're in development mode. Down here, we're bootstrapping our app, and this guy right here is where it means we're bootstrapping to a UI view. And this UI view is in our index.html here, and it's UI-view right there. Now, I am going to change this because I don't like bootstrapping to this UI view. I want to bootstrap to my root component. And that root component is hello.ts. So a hello component. Um, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and change this guy. And this selector is basically your HTML tag of what this is going to be. So this guy I'm going to change to app layout. And then in the index.html, I'm going to change this to app layout. And now back into the index.ts file, I have to tell Angular to bootstrap that component. So I'm actually going to get rid of this UI view and say hello component and bootstrap that in. I no longer need this UI view because it's not being used. And ta-da, we have the UI or the hello world working perfectly fine with no errors or anything. And let's just go ahead and plop this down at the bottom so we can just kind of see if we get any errors or anything very fast. Alrighty. First things first is let's just take a look at this component and see what's going on here. We're importing the component part of Angular 2 from Angular core right here. And right here we are telling Angular what this component's metadata is. This is its HTML selector. This is its HTML template. And then there's a few other ones like directives, which is an array. And then there's another one, which is providers, which is also an array. Directives would be anything like other components that you're going to use within this component's template, and then providers would be anything that you're going to use for a service or some dependency injection, anything like that. So we're not going to get into these just yet, but what we're going to do is we're going to start with some sort of navbar, just so that we can kind of get something all ready and set up. So I'm going to make a directory here called shared, and then I'm going to make another directory in that and call it navbar, and then I'm going to make a component file called navbar.component.ts. Awesome. I'm going to grab the component from Angular 2, and I'm going to write component and give it some metadata. I'm going to say that this is going to be a navbar HTML element, and I'm going to tell its template, which I haven't made yet, but it's going to be navbar-html. Awesome. And then I'm going to export navbar, or excuse me, export class navbar. And now this is ready to be imported and used wherever you want on our Angular 2 application. So first things first is I'm going to come down here and make navbar.html just so it knows what's going on here, and then we'll just do an h1 and say navbar. Now we need to get this component rendering on top of this hello world and ready to roll on the application. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back into this hello.ts, and we can see that its template is the hello.html. So I'm going to go into there and I'm going to reference this selector here and say navbar. And now this navbar won't show up here because it's not being, this component, this hello.ts, this hello component is not being told that it's not being told what this is and what controls it. So what we need to do is say directives and say navbar. Now it imports this navbar component and is now usable on this hello components template. And as you can see, we're just getting navbar.html as a string here because I need to require this. And now we get navbar. So for the templates, you need to say template require and then your file name or file path wherever it is. So now you can see that we have navbar popping up just above hello here. So let's change this up and let's see. Let's change this up and let's start creating just a couple routes and see how we do that. So normally in the nav bar, let's go to that. Where is in our nav bar, we wouldn't have this. We would probably have a nav tag and then a UL and a LI and then an A tag. And normally we'd have an href, but for Angular 2, it's actually going to be a UI sref. And whatever you put in the quotes here is going to be the name of your route. So right now we're just going to do home. And you'll see that this comes up just as a list item, but it doesn't go anywhere because we're not linking it anywhere. So let's go and check out our routes file. All right. So here we're calling initial states. So these are going to be our states. And each object is its own state. And each state comes with a name, a URL, and a component. And then down here, all these this array of objects of states, the initial states, each one of the states gets registered to the state registry. So that's how Angular knows how to then proceed with all these state objects and then create routes and everything with them. So right here you can see that our name for this default first state is app. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to home. And then as you can see, our URL is just a / here, and then we define our component. So I'm going to go and just say home here, and then in our navbar component, or navbar template file, I'm going to say home. And now you're thinking, okay, this should be linked, but it's not. So what do I need to do? Well, in order for Angular to recognize that this is a link, you need to actually add in our navbar components a directive of UI router directives. And we need to import this first. From UI router Angular 2. Now, if we save this out and then reload the page, you'll see that now we have this link. When we click on it, we're obviously at the home state, so nothing happens. So let's go ahead and add another state or another link here to a state. And let's just call this about and then say that it's an about link. And if we click this, we'll get an error. And this is because we don't have this state set up. So we need to go back to our routes, come down here, oops, and say that we have a name, and it's an about. About is the name of this route. And then we've got our URL, which is /about, what we want it to do. And then the component we actually haven't made yet. But I'm going to name this component about. Or we'll just hold off on that for now and go make this component. So let's make the an about directory so that we can be organized here. About dot component.ts, and then about.html. Awesome. And then in this about component, we'll just copy all this over so we have it. We won't need this for now. I'll change this, and I will change this, and then I will change this to about. And then back in our routes, we can say we want component about, and it automatically imports that for me. Thank you, JetBrains and PHP Storm. All right, so then what we need to do here is we should be able to, in the about template, say about, and then if we click this about link, it should populate, but it's not. And that's because we're not telling it where to populate. So on our hello template, we need to give it a UI view so it knows what to populate. All right, so if we give it that UI view, it should populate, which it's not, and the reason why is because we need to then actually go in and add the UI router directives to this state as well. So now that that's up and running, you can see that that gets imported, and looks like it's automatically importing into that UI view. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that UI view. Come back here, and we've got a bit of an issue here. Alrighty guys, so originally we had this component being declared in our first state. So whenever we were clicking on this URL, it was injecting this hello component uh, back into the state, and that hello component already has that navbar in its template. So that's why you're seeing then two navbars and then the about us content. So if we take this out, so you can see that um, you get this kind of thing going on. So we need to take this hello component out, and that'll just be what our app is bootstrapped to. And then when other um, places are navigated, when other routes are navigated to, we just get this about template popping up, and that's popping up into this UI view, and this nav bar is staying on top. And you can see that here. Oops. You can see that here. Come down, here's the app layout, and then inside of here we've got our navbar, which is right here, and this UI view. And then you can see that this UI view is then populating this about. So if we do this, that about goes away. And if we click about again, that about pops up. Alrighty, awesome. Well, that's about it for this one, guys. And in the next video, I'll show you guys how to do some nested views and using different components to capture different portions of a page um, and putting them all into one template. And we'll get into that in the next video. All right, thanks, guys.